Hey everyone, and welcome back. We're going to be diving into habits today.
With James Clear's Atomic Habits.
Nice.
So, yeah, I'm excited to kind of get into like how habits form and why they stick around, and what can we do about the habits that we don't love so much.
Yeah, totally. It's like we always think we need these big, dramatic changes, to get
Right.
big results in our lives. But Atomic Habits, it's kind of cool. He's like, no, it's those tiny 1% changes every day that really make a difference.
Okay, 1%. Like,
Yeah.
how much of a difference can 1% really make?
Right. You'd be
Uh-huh.
surprised. It actually adds up really fast.
Okay.
He gives this cool example of the British cycling team.
Okay.
So back in 2003, they were like in the total slump, right? They hadn't
Okay.
won anything in like decade. And then they brought in this new performance director, and he was all about these tiny 1% improvements.
What kind of improvements are we talking about?
I mean, like everything. They redesigned the bike seats to be more comfortable.
Okay.
They even started like rubbing alcohol on the tires for better grip.
Wow.
They painted the inside of the team truck white
Oh,
just so
wow.
they could spot any dust that might affect the bikes.
Seriously.
Yeah, I know. It sounds crazy, right? But
Yeah.
all these tiny things, they added up.
So it worked.
It totally worked. Within a few years, British cycling went from like 0 to hero.
No way.
They were winning Olympic gold medals, breaking world records. They even won the Tour de France for the first time in like a century.
That is wild. Okay, so why don't we hear more about this whole 1% approach then?
Right. It's like the best kept secret or something.
Yeah.
I think part of it is like our brains are kind of wired for instant gratification,
100%.
We want to see those big wins right away.
Totally, yeah.
But habits don't really work like that. It's more like this,
Yeah.
Clear calls it the plateau of latent potential. Imagine like you have an ice cube
Uh-huh.
and you're slowly raising the temperature. For a while, nothing seems to be happening, right?
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden, boom, the ice melts. Habits are kind of the same way.
I see. Yeah.
You might not see the results right away, but that doesn't mean your work isn't, doing anything.
Right. So how do we push past that?
Well, this is where
Yeah.
it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
This is where he talks about systems versus goals.
Systems versus goals.
Yeah.
So instead of saying like, I want to run a marathon,
Right.
it's like, I want to be the kind of person who, runs every day or something.
Exactly. Yeah, it's about falling in love with the process, right?
Right.
Like the daily rituals, the routines, the things that actually get you to that goal, whatever it is.
Okay, but isn't that kind of, I know, I feel like that's a tough mindset shift for a lot of us because we're so used to like,
Yeah, right.
I'll be happy when,
Yes.
I'll be happy when I achieve this thing.
Totally.
So how do we get out of that?
Well, and that's actually, he argues, that can actually backfire, right? Like
Yeah.
focusing only on goals can keep you trapped in this cycle of like, I'll be happy when, I'll be successful when.
Right.
But what if, what if we could find that joy in the process itself, like in the showing up consistently? That's where I think you unlock a more kind of sustainable and fulfilling type of happiness.
So instead of, I want to write a book,
Mhm.
it's, I want to be the kind of person who writes every day.
Exactly. Yeah, you're shifting from like a goal-oriented mindset to more of an identity-based one.
Yeah.
It's like, who is the type of person who achieves this goal? What are their habits? And how can I start embodying those habits today?
So it's like those tiny changes, those atomic habits, they're not just about like this external outcome.
Right.
It's about like the kind of person you're becoming along the way.
100%, yeah. And he breaks this whole process down, like how habits actually work, into what he calls the 4-step habit loop.
Oh, yeah.
Have you heard of this?
Yeah, yeah. Isn't that like the whole thing with the cat in the box?
Exactly,
Yeah.
yes. Edward Thorndike, the puzzle boxes? Yes. So he would put these cats in these boxes,
Okay.
and the cats had to figure out how to get out.
Right.
And there was a lever they had to press to like open the door to get a treat.
Okay.
But they didn't know that at first, right?
Right.
So they're in there, they're trying all this stuff, bumping into the walls, meowing, like, what's going on?
Yeah.
But eventually, like by accident, they'd hit the lever
Okay.
and the door would open, they'd get their treat.
Okay.
But here's the thing. Each time they did it, they got a little bit faster, a
Yeah.
little bit more efficient, right?
Yeah.
Because they were starting to learn the association.
All right.
Like,
Yeah.
oh, if I hit this lever, I get this reward.
I get my treat. Right.
Exactly. So eventually, it became automatic, right? Like they didn't even have to think about it anymore.
Boom.
Habit.
So our brains are like kind of doing that all the time, right?
All the time, yeah.
But-
Our brains are constantly scanning for those cues, those
Right.
things that lead to rewards, and then we create these like mental shortcuts,
Yeah.
these if-then connections.
If this, then that. Yeah.
Right, and the more we repeat those actions, the more those connections get stronger.
Right.
And eventually, you don't even have to think about it anymore.
Like, it just becomes automatic.
It becomes automatic.
Which, I mean, that's kind of the point, right? To free up. Like,
Exactly. Yeah, our brains love efficiency, right?
yeah, totally.
They want to conserve energy whenever they can. And habits are like the ultimate form of efficiency for our brains.
Habits are our brain's way of creating freedom, which is so funny to think about because I feel like we always think about habits as being like limiting.
Right.
Like, oh, I'm stuck in this rut. I have this habit.
Totally. Yeah.
But you're saying it's actually the opposite.
It's the opposite because if you think about it, right, if you're constantly having to make decisions about every little thing, like
Yeah.
when to exercise, what to eat, when to work on that project,
Yeah.
it's exhausting, right?
Well,
It drains your energy.
Mentally, yeah.
It leaves you with less mental capacity for creativity, for
Yeah.
like pursuing those bigger aspirations,
Yeah.
those things that you really care about.
So it's like those tiny habits, it's almost like decluttering,
Yes,
but like mentally.
100%. Yeah. It's like clearing the clutter in your mind so you have more space and energy for those things that really matter.
But okay, so we've got those mental shortcuts, we've got those habits.
But, oh, what about the bad habits? The ones that we're like, I wish I didn't do that, you know?
Right? Like if habits are so powerful,
Yeah.
how do we make sure that they're like working for us, you know,
Totally.
instead of against us?
Yeah. Like, how do we break free from like the negative patterns
Yeah.
and actually build habits that are aligned with like
Right.
the person we want to be?
It's funny how like, you know, those habits creep up on you. You don't even realize they're happening.
Right, right.
And then suddenly you're stuck. Right.
Yeah, like, how did I get here?
Totally.
Exactly.
So, you know, Clear talks about this connection between our habits and our identity.
Okay, habits and identity.
Yeah.
How are those two related?
So it's like this. Our habits aren't just these isolated things that we do, right?
Yeah.
They're actually a reflection of who we believe we are.
Okay.
So every time we perform a habit, it's like we're casting a vote for the type of person we see ourselves as.
Interesting. So, like, if I hit the snooze button every morning,
right.
I'm casting a vote for I'm not a morning person.
Exactly. Like,
Okay.
yep, that's me. I'm not a morning person. And those votes add up, right?
Right.
So over time, it reinforces that self-image.
Okay. So that can be good or it can be not so good,
Exactly.
depending on what the habit is, right?
Totally. Yeah.
Because it's like, if we're not careful, we just end up with all these, like, limiting beliefs about ourselves.
Right. Yeah. Like, I'm always late.
Right. Exactly. I'm always late.
I'm bad with money. I'm terrible at saying no.
Yes. I'm just not good at that.
Yep. And we start to, like, resist certain actions, right?
Right.
Because they don't fit into that story we've created about ourselves.
No, that's so interesting.
But here's the good news.
Okay, what's the good news?
Our identities aren't set in stone,
Okay.
right? Like, we have the power to change those beliefs, to rewrite the story
How do we do that?
by changing what we do.
Oh, interesting.
Right. So it's not just about building new habits.
Yeah.
It's about using those habits to create a new identity.
So both.
It's both. Yeah,
It's like this feedback loop.
exactly. Our habits shape our identity, and our identity shapes our habits.
Okay, so give me an example.
Okay. So let's say you want to become a more organized person.
Right.
Right. So instead of just saying, I need to be more organized, which is kind of vague,
Right, yeah.
you could start with something as simple as like making your bed every morning.
Oh, okay.
Right. Sounds small.
Right.
But that small action, it becomes a vote for that more organized identity.
I like that. It's like you're proving it to yourself in a way.
Exactly. It's
Yep,
like,
yep.
see, I am the kind of person who makes their bed. Maybe I am organized.
Okay, so it's those tiny changes, those
Mm.
atomic habits, and they all become these little votes for the person we want to be.
Exactly. And those votes, they add up over
They
time.
compound, just like
Compound, exactly.
just like the British cycling team.
100%.
Yeah.
It's the same principle. Small changes, big results.
Amazing.
Well, that about wraps it up for our deep dive into the power of tiny changes. Remember, lasting transformation, it happens one small step at a time.